Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast from Pharma Voice. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from Next Level. For more information, visit nxlevelsolutions.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, co-founder and editor-in-chief at Pharma Voice, meets with Diana Brainard, MD, CEO, AlloVir.
Dr. Brainard, welcome to the WOW podcast program.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Taryn. It's really a pleasure to be here.
I can't wait to dig in. You have such a fascinating journey. You joined AlloVir at a unique inflection point. To set the stage for our listeners, the company went public during COVID-19. Most employees have never met in real life, and the company is growing at a frenetic pace. You have a robust pipeline, multiple mid-stage late clinical trial programs in progress, and you have the promise of an ambitious and talented team focused on delivering on objectives. So let's start to unpack what's happening in your world. Tell me about taking the company public during the pandemic, first of all.
Sure. So the company went public about 1 year ago. It's next week, our 1 year anniversary of being public. And at that time, I was actually a board member. I wasn't yet the CEO. And, it was just one of the things that was so impressive about the company was how they moved incredibly quickly to, pull things together and had this tremendous IPO. And at the same time, that was just one part of the many pieces on which they were executing and never really took their eye off the ball on the important clinical development that was advancing as well. And so, I think that if AlloVir has a hallmark, it's of, people being relentlessly focused and on task and able to kind of work together with a unity of purpose that is really essential to, especially when you're not working face to face, for everybody to understand what they're doing and where the goalposts are.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on that 1 year milestone coming up. It had to be tremendously exciting. And as you say, you weren't yet CEO. So tell me about that transition from the board to becoming a CEO.
Yeah. So I have to say that I never had as part of my, career path that I would someday end up as CEO, but I was working at Gilead Sciences, overseeing our virology therapeutic area, and as part of that role, had gotten in contact with AlloVir and knew them very well because we had made an investment in them and were really impressed with the viruses that they were targeting, the approach they were taking with this T-cell therapy platform that was off the shelf. And as I got to know the team better, got to know the board through being an independent director, when it became clear that David Halal, the prior CEO, was looking to transition because he was also the CEO of another private company and really couldn't do both of them in perpetuity, I just recognized it felt like a very natural fit for me, and that a lot of the skills that I had honed in my role as therapeutic area head would come in extremely handy in terms of being a CEO with respect to building a team, setting a vision, bringing people together, telling a story, and having people understand the why for where we're headed and then how we're going to get there and what needs to be done. And with the support of such a great executive team, just felt like it was the right chance for me to jump into something new while also leaning on the strengths that I had already developed over time in my prior job.
I love that you didn't have this as one of your career goals, but when the moment appeared for you, you leaned into it and you didn't wait to make sure that you had to check every box as most women tend to do, right? To see that you were ready for the role, but you were obviously very ready for the role. So congratulations. And now that you're leading a publicly traded company, How do you keep that startup personality? Is this a challenge? And how are you setting the culture for the organization?
Well, it is always a challenge to keep people working, not just hard, because I think that at AlloVir there are many incredibly talented and hardworking, committed people, but having them make sure that everybody's working on the things that are really going to be high yield, because it's easy to kind of get caught up in doing things that may feel important in the moment, but may not be really driving you towards your objectives. And I think for that, you mentioned it, it's all about setting the culture and having people understand what the, short-term, medium-term, and long-term mission and vision are. And that's something that when I came in May and officially started, we kind of jumped on right away, because the company had been in a period, as you alluded to, of really tremendous growth, and had gone pre-pandemic from around 20 people to right now we've crossed the 100 threshold, and our growth is slowing down now. But that's an enormous increase in employees at a time when people haven't met each other face to face. And so even with the highest top talent, you still need to spend effort taking those talented individuals and helping them become high-performing teams, and helping them set achievable goals for the teams to drive towards. And that's something that we've been working on at a team level, and then also at a corporate level, saying what are our bigger goals, and what are our values, so that we can make sure that how we're acting on a day-to-day basis is really united across a common set of values.
Absolutely. With that fivefold increase in employees, that kind of growth is hard to manage at any time. If you were in an office, it would be difficult. But virtually, I would think it presents even more unique challenges. How are you building these high-performing teams in this reality versus in the other times when you were maybe in the office during your previous positions? What are some of those nuances that you've been able to embrace to keep everybody revved up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that in my past experience, the secret sauce to really getting to high-performing teams has been a lot of face time, and a lot of that, building trust as people get to know each other as individuals, and as people who have whole, full lives outside of the working environment, and recognizing and kind of building that confidence in people, that you can disagree with them without taking offense or feeling hurt or offended, that you can be creative and brainstorm and put yourself out on the line and be vulnerable. And so without that, what we've really tried to do is, first of all, create a pathway to get people back together in person, but not wait until that can happen, to try to set up meetings and times for people to have a little bit of connection, whether that's before the meeting or after the meeting, on those online platforms, to try to recapitulate some of that hallway chit chat or sitting in the conference room chit chat. And then we're also trying to do, have initiated things that, many companies do. So this isn't rocket science, but things like, all hands meetings on a very regular basis, just trying to plan for some, team-based, team building activities, even done virtual through like games and competitions, things like that.
Excellent. And, I guess you really do have to think about life differently when you're virtual, but it's also provides some, I think, unique opportunities, because it does let you get to know your employees on a whole different level, because you're literally in their homes. So it takes, you've got dogs, you've got kids, somebody, it's their home life that you really get to appreciate more so than if you see somebody from 8 to 6 in the office.
That's right. And I think that highlights the importance of, bringing vulnerability into the workplace and how powerful that can be, particularly for leaders when they feel comfortable letting people see them as full human beings. And and being able to be a strong person and a strong leader, but also acknowledging vulnerability with, whatever it is, like a dog running through the background, or a kid, or a stain on your dress, in person, right? Like these things, that's real life. And it's helpful for people to see that. And I think it also creates an environment where then you can have vulnerability in the work that you do, which is also important. Acknowledging uncertainty, recognizing mistakes, course correcting, all of those things are so critical in small companies because you really need to be agile.
Such excellent points. Thank you so much. That's really, really important. Let's turn to the company's pipeline, if we could. Tell me about your focus on developing allogeneic, off-the-shelf virus-specific, or T cells, or they call VST therapy candidates. Tell me about that area of focus, and what are the viruses that you're addressing?
Sure. So we've got a couple of different programs. Our lead program targets 6 different viruses, some of which you've probably heard of, and some which are less well known: CMV, adenovirus, JC virus, BK virus, HHV6, and Epstein-Barr virus. And these viruses tend to cause disease in patients who have trouble with their own immune systems, so have immunocompromised, and that's often in the stem cell transplant arena or in the solid organ transplant arena. These are viruses that someone with a normal immune system will often hold in check. But then when your immune system is damaged, they can resurface, reactivate, and cause a lot of problems. And so our approach is to help the body's immune system by giving off-the-shelf T cells that fight these viruses. And it's a concept that's been around for a long time, over 2 decades. People have done this at academic centers, sort of on a one-off basis. But what AlloVir is doing is taking this approach and really scaling it and studying it in a very rigorous way to enable this approach to be available very broadly, so that many patients in multiple different settings, whether it's academic or more traditional hospital setting, can have access to these therapies and don't have to suffer the consequences of these really very devastating viral infections in the immunocompromised setting. Before I stop there, I will say we also have a respiratory virus program, which has been on hold because of COVID, influenza, parainfluenza, RSV, human metapneumovirus, all of these pesky seasonal respiratory viruses. The rates of them have gone down tremendously because of COVID. Conversely, COVID has been a huge problem, and we have a COVID program and then have a few other viruses we're targeting in the pipeline. So there's really a tremendous amount of action ongoing right now and across research and development.
That's awesome. All this with 100 people, so amazing. Forgive my naivety about this question. Tell me, what's the importance of the off-the-shelf piece of this?
Yeah, so off-the-shelf really stands in contrast to what people would call autologous or single, one donor, one recipient. So when you have something that's off the shelf, it means that you can, when you have someone who might benefit from your treatment, you don't have to then create the cells right there from either the recipient, him or herself, or from an identified donor in real time. And that's the case for a lot of cell therapy. It's one donor, one recipient. For us, because the cells only need to be matched at 2 out of the 8 HLA or immune criteria, we can create a bank of cells. And then when a person comes who might benefit, you look at their immune profile and you can match it to our existing bank. And with over 99% certainty, we can find a set of cells that are going to be a good match for you and pull them off the shelf and and send them and get them to the site in less than 48 hours. And so that makes it very efficient and makes it a lot easier for us in terms of the manufacturing.
Fascinating. You are a physician and an MD. How do you translate these talents into your CE role? I would think there's an advantage to you considering the area of focus that you're working in.
Well, I do think that as an infectious disease physician, and with a long history in virology, my research focus was HIV immunology when I was in the lab, and then I spent a long time in industry working on antivirals. But I think more than that, so that content expertise is helpful, but more than that, I think some of the training and the mindset of being a good physician is directly relevant. And I think that is, that sense of taking accountability and real ownership of, taking care of things. And that's something you learn during your training in the hospital as a doctor of you have to be responsible for making sure that the patient is getting what he or she needs. And that doesn't mean you have to draw all of the bloods and do the EKGs yourself and, administer the medications, but it is your responsibility to make sure that those things are done. And if sometimes you have to do them yourself to make sure they get done, well, then that's going to happen. It's that sort of accountability, directly or indirectly, and then also the ability to work really well in a team. So, particularly in the hospital, you're never working just alone as a physician. You're working with other physicians, you're working with nurses, you're working with staff, you're taking care of a patient. The patient often has an extended family that's involved. And so that ability to interface in a complex environment with multiple different stakeholders, it's really very directly relevant, and so there are a lot of parallels there, and I feel like I draw on that a lot, and I have throughout my career in industry.
Wonderful. And as you noted, you're an infectious disease specialist, and you were also noted that you were at Gilead for quite some time. And Gilead was instrumental in repurposing the Ebola treatment remdesivir into the first antiviral to treat COVID-19. What was this experience like, especially because of the huge spotlight on the drug? What did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a once in a lifetime experience, and I feel tremendously grateful for having the opportunity to contribute to fighting the pandemic in such a direct way. I mean, it was such a great outlet to feel like I was able to be part of the solution, rather than just struggling as a bystander watching everything unfold. And there were a lot of challenges. There were sort of just the physical challenges of working so hard and the teams working so many hours and for so many days without a day off. I mean, I think there was maybe a 3-month stretch in March of 2020 when nobody had taken a day off in months, and that was really grueling. And then there was the stress of being in such a high stakes environment where everything we did was under a microscope, and a lot of what we had to do was at risk before we even knew that remdesivir was going to be safe or effective. And we were really happy when the study, the double-blind placebo-controlled study, showed that it worked, but we had to invest so many resources, so much people time and financial time into scaling up manufacturing, into doing studies, getting the drug out and ready to be available, without knowing whether or not it was going to be helpful. And it was a huge relief when it was, but then you have to contend with, a lot of, issues around like drug shortages and sensitivity around drug pricing. And, you never get it perfectly, but I think the idea of working to do as best as you can with the information you have in the moment, and not looking backward, but just continuing to look forward and, adapting and course correcting when you need to. all of that was really critically important.
Well, thank you for sharing and giving us a glimpse inside what that experience was like. And we're very grateful to all of the folks, including your team as well as the other teams who worked so tirelessly to bring solutions to the market to help with this pandemic. Really unsung heroes, all of you all. Let's talk about just go back a little bit to your role as CEO. As a first-time CEO, and you haven't been in the role that long, what are you finding to be the best parts of your job?
Yeah, I think that what I'm enjoying most of all is being in an experience where I'm learning so many new things. I mean, that to me is really such a gift to be in a position where I can just kind of absorb all of this new information, learn new skills. I'm the whole financial side of being the CEO of a small company is new to me. I mean, I always had a budget at Gilead. I spent a lot of time, with earnings calls and speaking with analysts, but it's very different as the CEO of a company. And so I've got a great team, a really seasoned executive team, particularly a really experienced chief financial officer, and they're I'm just learning from them constantly, and that feels really exciting. And then the other thing I would say is just it's fun to be in a disease area that has no approved therapies, and kind of being a trailblazer there and figuring things out. You've got this almost like a blank canvas, and it can make it a little bit scary, but it can also be a wonderful opportunity for creativity, and especially when there's a huge unmet medical need. You can feel with a sense of urgency, like, this is our chance to really shine, and that's a very unique opportunity because there aren't that many diseases where there aren't any treatments.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Now that you have moved into the CEO role, and there still aren't that many women sitting in these seats of influence, you are now a role model to so many others in the industry. What does that mantle of responsibility mean to you? And is there anything you'd like to pass on to other women in the field, something you wish you had known sooner that you know now about making that leap into that leadership role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if you think that you want to, whether it's become CEO, take a different executive position, don't hold yourself back. Don't worry about not having all the qualifications. Like you mentioned before, whether or not you're qualified on paper, if this is something that you want to do and you can make it work for yourself, for your family, whatever, just go for it. And I think I have moments where I say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then I remind myself, like, this is a journey. And if I wasn't doing this and I was still on the board of directors and there was a different CEO who had taken that role, I would probably regret it. I'd say, I think I could be doing that job. And so I'm so glad that, when that opportunity came up, I didn't pause, I didn't wait, I didn't second guess myself. And so I think that's one thing, is just, have the confidence to go for it. And then the second piece, which is very much related, is to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the support that you need. And I've been really amazed at, coming to Boston. I've moved across the country, and before I left California, I met with a lot of people that had, been sort of mentors or informal, providing guidance to me. And people were so happy for me that I was taking this opportunity and offering to be a source of support and whenever I needed. And then coming to Boston and reconnecting with people here, because this is where I lived and did my medical training, I really experienced the same degree of enthusiasm from others. And doing this now before I have any problems where I need help, I think is really important, because it's nice to have those reconnections established before you actually have a problem you want to discuss. And so I think that that's something that isn't necessarily first nature for me. I tend to be more introverted and not necessarily going out and doing a lot of networking, but I'm enjoying it, and I also think it will set me up for when the inevitable problems and issues arise. I'm going to have a good stable of people who are there for me to help.
You touched on a very important point, that it's so important to have that network before you need that network.
Mm-hmm.
And right in that support and that posse of folks who are on your team. They're all Team Diana, and I love that you have gotten such great positive feedback and enthusiasm for taking on the role. And that had to be a big adjustment too. From California to Boston, even though you had gone to school there, but that's a big culture shift as well. And moving in during a pandemic and all that entails. That's no easy task.
That's right. And we did it very quickly. I've got 3 kids in school, middle school and high school, so it's definitely not easy for them. And I feel really grateful for my husband. He's been incredibly supportive, and my kids have been really remarkably resilient. So all of that has made things easier, but it's still it's a big change. And remembering that I have to remind myself sometimes I'm really good at mapping out logistics and planning, but sometimes I underestimate that emotional part of it too, which is a lot, and making sure to have time for that, not just for myself, but for others and my family has been really important.
Another really important point, and good for your kids and good for your husband to support you on this journey. Kids will bounce back. They're pretty resilient, as you said. And who knows what doors, will be open to them now here that they didn't maybe have in California. So I wish you continued success and good luck there. You talked about having this network of individuals available for inevitably when something might go wrong. What kind of advice do you have, or what do you think about leaders need to have to thrive and survive during uncertainty? What are those skill sets?
Getting comfortable with uncertainty is absolutely critical. And I think part of that is recognizing, getting away from black and white thinking and binary thinking, that there's one right answer, there's one wrong answer, there are good people and bad people, good choices, bad choices. I think, particularly in times of uncertainty and arenas where things are murky and you don't have all the information you need, having the ability to live with ambiguity and say, this is the information I have right now. It's not as much as I would want, but not getting stuck in the waiting for more information, unless there's something very clear, like where you can say, at this time, this piece of information is going to come in. This is how it's going to change my decision making. Therefore, I'm going to wait for it. But in many instances, I've seen decision paralysis because of incomplete information, and a delay in decision making when it's a hard decision because of incomplete information. But then you get more information, and it's still really hard to make that decision just because it's a hard decision, not because you actually got information that's going to tell you what to do. And so I think having the insight individually and then collectively, making sure as you're working with your team and whatever team that is, that people aren't falling into that trap of postponing action and postponing decisions just because it's hard, and then using the ambiguity as a rationale.
Oh, what an important piece of advice. I think all of us can relate to those moments of analysis paralysis at times, but you need to fight through that and come to the other side. Thank you for that insight. That was awesome. And Diana, because this is our WOW podcast program, I'm going to ask you to identify one accomplishment or an area or something you've done that changed your career trajectory. What has been your wow moment? And I can imagine you've had many wow moments throughout your career, but what's the one right now that has left a lasting impression on you?
Yeah, Taryn, this is a good one because I have had so many, and it's hard to pick one. But I think that if I had to pick one thing that really kind of changed my path, I would say that this was really about 10 years ago when I worked for the first time with an executive coach, and it was just a transformative experience to I hadn't ever done anything like that before. And the combination of, going through the 360 review, of working with her, she really changed how I saw my job. Prior to working with her, I had always seen my job as really just being an expert at the work that I did and not being a political person, not being a networking person. And what she helped me really come to embrace was, if my job was limited to only the technical expertise I brought to the table, then in many senses I was leaving a lot behind, because if I really want to care about what I'm working on, then to have the biggest impact, I have to, part of my job is to help people understand what I'm doing, to figure out the most effective way to work with my boss's boss, to really motivate the team, to figure out solutions to working with difficult people, and embracing that not as, oh, I just, that's something I have to do, but as this is part of being effective. So if I really care about this drug getting to as many patients as possible, all of this is as important as my clinical knowledge, my scientific knowledge, my ability to run a study. And she's, so I worked with her very intensely for about 9 months. And then periodically along the way, she's always been there for me during times of transition. And I would just encourage people to consider that as their, if they feel stuck in their career, or even not, if they have the opportunity, it can be really incredibly transformational. And if you think about people working in other arenas, a lot of people have coaches, right? Athletes have coaches, and entertainers have voice coaches, and executives can benefit from coaches too. And isn't it nice to have someone just focused on making you become your best self?
What a great piece of advice. And thank you so much for sharing that personal journey with us. I think that's an amazing piece of that's just a great thing to understand. And I love that it helped you get to where you are today. And I want to thank you for being part of our WOW podcast program. And I want to wish you continued great success in your current role and bringing these really important medicines to the market. So thank you so much for what you're doing for the industry.
Thank you, Taryn. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks to Next Level for making this episode possible. For more information, visit nxlevelsolutions.com. And don't forget to check out our other WOW episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2021 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks LLC.